Director Generals, ambassadors, members of parliament, colleagues in SIPRI, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. I'm really proud and happy and honored that you would take the afternoon off to join us in starting the celebrations of the anniversary of SIPRI, 50 years this year. But as many of you know, this all started a bit earlier. This was then Alva Myrdal, our then ambassador to the Geneva Disarmament Conference, discovered that when they talked about different figures, the great powers had their figures, and they differed, and other countries did not have any figures. So it was very hard to make progress in these discussions. So she went back to the government and suggested that Sweden should do something about it. And in Sweden, then we always create a royal commission. And so did the then government, consisting of 6 prominent Swedes, of which one was, of course, Alva Myrdal. Another one was Hannes Alfvén, later Nobel Prize winner in 1970. And the secretary of this committee was Örjan Berner. And I know that Örjan is somewhere here. Thank you, Örjan, for joining us. And the result was SIPRI. And as you know, S does not stand for Sweden, but for Stockholm. And that was on purpose, because this was an international body, not a Swedish Peace Research Institute. And we are always very cautious of our independence. And I think SIPRI has been extremely successful during the 50 years we have been working. And I hope that this will continue for another at least 50 years. And unfortunately, with the outlook in the world, it looks as if we are needed. We have today 4 prominent speakers, and we also have the world listening live on live streaming. So please keep your hands under control and do not fall asleep. But first of all, we have our speakers. We have the King of Sweden, we have the Speaker of the Parliament, we have the Foreign Minister, and we have our new director, Dan Smith. So now, first of all, if I may invite Your Majesty to climb up on the rostrum. This side, I think, is better. And I would like to say that we are very grateful that, yes, you can come around, that you are able to join us again. You have been at SIPRI several times before, and I know you take a keen interest in these questions, and thank you so much for joining us for this celebration. Please, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight some of the impressive achievements of SIPRI with a great impact on how we can see the world. But this is also a appropriate occasion to look at the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead. SIPRI's aim is to contribute to an understanding of the conditions for peaceful solutions of international conflicts and for a stable peace. This is, of course, not an easy task, but it is indeed the most important one. We live in an increasingly complex world. Policymakers need to base their decision on facts from sources that can be trusted to be objective. And SIPRI is such a source, and this is what has made SIPRI so successful. From the start in 1966, the work of the Institute has been based on values and principles that are, well, timeless. And this includes the use of open sources, international top-class researchers on a rotating basis and maintaining a balanced approach and a fair mind analysis. The results are truly impressive. SIPRI is, I would say, ranked among the most prominent think tanks of the world. Its research and data are quoted and read by politicians, diplomats, journalists, experts, and the general public in every corner of the world. The Institute's data of nuclear weapons have helped generations of diplomats in negotiation on disarmament. And a result, the number of nuclear weapons is indeed lower today than its peak in the 70s and the 80s. SIPRI's research and recommendations on chemical weapons and the arms trade have successfully been used by governments to limit and ban some of these weapons to reach agreement on important treaties. Because of its neutrality, SIPRI has been able to facilitate meeting between parties that otherwise not have been able to talk to each other. And today, relations between countries, regions, cities, and human beings are constantly evolving. In this context, SIPRI's balanced research and trusted voice is of utmost importance, also now as in the past. So I offer my sincere congratulations on the first 50 successful years, and by wishing you the best luck in the years to come. Good luck and thank you.
Your Majesty, for those kind words. And now I would ask the speaker to take the rostrum and come up to the lectern. The Speaker of the Parliament is, of course, here as the representative of the Parliament, together with some other members of Parliament. The Parliament is, after all, the founding father of SIPRI, and generously every year contribute to our activities. But also you personally have been very helpful, not least when it comes to the preparation of this anniversary and the celebrations and the different initiatives we're going to take this year. So thank you very much, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to represent the Swedish Parliament, the Riksdag, on this very special occasion. It was the Riksdag that decided to establish the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI. 50 years later, we are gathered here to celebrate the anniversary of a world-renowned organization. The idea of a Sweden-based but international Peace Research Institute originated in a time that was characterized by arms race, conflicts, and serious threats towards international peace and security. Sweden's 150 years of peace were a great exception in that world. In commemoration of this long-standing peace, Prime Minister Erlander's government presented the proposal to establish SIPRI. Alva Myrdal, who led the commission of inquiry that preceded the proposal, emphasized in the Riksdag debate that there was strong support in the Riksdag for establishing SIPRI. And she also said, and I quote, "If I may be allowed to add the fact that this positive interest is shared in many parts of the world, and the initiatives of the government have met with much more appreciation than would have been the case if we had preferred to commemorate our 150 years of uninterrupted peace by constructing some monument made by stone." And I think Alva Myrdal was absolutely right. The work of SIPRI and what you have done had benefited Sweden and peace in a much better way than a monument in stone. During the years, the Riksdag has continued to have mutual points of contact with SIPRI, and not only by means of budget decisions that we take every autumn. I know that our members of parliament are to be found among politicians, diplomats, researchers and debaters, all of whom find its works extremely useful. SIPRI is an important actor within its field. Facts, analysis and research enjoy international recognition. This recognition emanates from the fundamental values that have together built SIPRI's good name. Here I would like to highlight the importance of autonomy and independence. Independence has been of importance ever since the foundation of SIPRI, aiming at an objectivity not possible to put to question. I think that was a wise starting point. People who are trying to find the answers to complex questions need access to objective facts and a balanced knowledge base. Facts like these, originating from independent research, based on open sources, make up a thorough information base. SIPRI has its own library and several databases. It also produces a large number of publications. Among these, the SIPRI Yearbook is well known and I can say widely used. Okay, not all of us have read the book from page 1 to the end of the book, but I can assure you that most of us have looked into it, checked some facts and figures, and checking out the numbers, being sure that we are saying the right things in the debate or in speeches. SIPRI's principal fields of research concern regional and global security, armed conflict and conflict management, military spending and armaments and disarmament, arms control and non-proliferation. Carrying out research on the subject of disarmament and arms control has been a priority since the beginning. These issues are also of great importance today. The international dimension is, of course, another significant part of SIPRI's profile. And listen carefully now, because this sentence is the best sentence in my speech. SIPRI works for disarmament by arming us with knowledge. Based on objectivity, reliability, and with global representation, SIPRI's activities help bring about peace and conflict resolution. These are subjects we value highly in Sweden and that we're happy to be associated with. SIPRI's activities not only strengthen knowledge and understanding of peace and security in the world, but it also helps maintain a positive and strengthened image of Sweden. The threats against peace and security 50 years ago were noticeable. And the challenge of today and tomorrow to peace and stability are hardly less significant. Just to mention a few. Military rearmament, weapons of mass destructions, and control regimes are still urgent issues on the international agenda. Tensions have risen in our immediate vicinity, and a bloody war is going on in Syria, resulting in many human tragedies. The effect of changes in climate as regards conflict should not be underestimated. The fight against international terrorism is a common concern for all of us. Matters like these and SIPRI's activities cover a truly changing spectrum. The need for knowledge and research is no less urgent today. In its presentation, SIPRI makes a very important point. The Institute's vision is a world in which sources of insecurity are identified and understood, conflicts are prevented or resolved, and peace is sustained. This was exactly what the Riksdag decision of 1966 was about. This is what we want to achieve. On behalf of the Swedish Parliament, the Riksdag, I would like to congratulate SIPRI on the last 50 years, and I look forward to your continued efforts in the service of peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and we'll absolutely do our utmost. Madam Minister, I now invite you to take the floor, and I'm so happy to find you here. When I asked you a few weeks ago if it would be possible for you to come here to participate in the celebration, you immediately said, yes, of course, this is very important. And knowing your very tough agenda, this really warmed my heart, because that shows how important SIPRI is to you and the government. And also, I would like you to send a message to your state secretary, who unfortunately is not here today, because I know she has been very hard at work when it comes to helping us with the delicate budget problem. So that is important to me too. Please, you have the floor, Minister.
Thank you, Your Majesty, Excellencies, dear friends. On behalf of the Swedish government, I am indeed proud to be celebrating the Institute's 50th anniversary with you. 50 years after the Swedish Riksdag, and thank you for an excellent speech. In 1966, took the wise decision to establish the Institute, and it is a pleasure to note that SIPRI continues to rank very high among the world's think tanks. I believe that the old saying, if you want peace, prepare for war, should rather be, if you want peace, prepare for peace. And what I want to say is this: we must invest in peace. We must invest in research, in a solid knowledge base that can work as a starting point for negotiations. And of course, SIPRI's important research is essential to increasing global knowledge about peace, conflict management, and international security, including disarmament, non-proliferation, and arms control. And how could I stand here without saying something also about try women? What about women, peace, and security? Where would we be also in the fight against nuclear arms if not women had been very active? We cannot ignore half of the world's population. It will not be a sustainable peace if women are not among the signatories of peace agreements and peace deals. And unfortunately, this is still not the case. It does not come naturally, not without a fight. We have seen it in Mali, we've seen it in Libya, we see it in Syria, that we have to make sure that we fight for securing a seat around the table also for women. Because they are also not only peacemakers, they are peacekeepers to a high degree. And research and what the knowledge we have gathered demonstrate that with women at the negotiations, we will also have more options on the table. And the conditions are there for a more sustainable peace. So I'm proud to be representing a feminist foreign policy and a feminist government that recognizes this, and very much of our work will continue to be to ensure that women can find a seat around the table where peace is negotiated, that their experiences and their views are also taken into account. SIPRI's research, as we've already heard, and recommendations have been used by governments to successfully limit and ban weapons and to agree on treaties. And SIPRI's impartiality has enabled it to facilitate meetings and dialogue between parties that would otherwise not have been able to talk. SIPRI was created, of course, at a time with great tensions in the world, with the Cold War at its height and armed conflicts escalating in different parts of the world. The nuclear arms race was at its peak and new nuclear powers were emerging. But the end of the 60s also brought hope when the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, was open for signature in 1968. And the NPT remains central to preventing further proliferation of nuclear weapons. The promise, indeed the obligation of the nuclear weapon states to disarm their arsenals, remain unfulfilled, as SIPRI's yearbook can attest to. The issues of international peace and security that were at the center of SIPRI's mission at its creation remains as important today. Sweden will continue to work together with others to make sure that nuclear disarmament the humanitarian perspective, and the risks that nuclear weapons carry with them will remain in focus and will be taken forward in forums where we can reach concrete results. We will continue to rely on SIPRI to provide knowledge to help us in this work. Your Majesty, Excellencies, dear friends and colleagues, Sweden remains confident in its commitment to contributing to peace, security, conflict management, and development. We will continue to do what we can and cooperate with others who share our will to make the world a safer place for everyone. Our candidacy for the UN Security Council should be seen in this context. And at a time when conflicts in the world are again on the increase, we clearly need reliable information and sound analysis of developments in SIPRI's core fields of research. We thank you for the work that you've been doing for 50 years now. We wish you successful another 50 years and every success in this endeavor for the many years to come. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much, Minister, for these well wishes. And when it comes to the importance of women in sustainable peace, I can assure you that this is something that we are very much well aware of in SIPRI. We have quite an important project in Mali where we try to involve the civil society in the peace building, and there women do play quite an important role. So we are very much aware of that. Finally now, I would welcome our new director, Dan Smith, formerly International Alert, and before that, PRIO. We're very proud to have you here, and we are looking forward to your future in SIPRI. And I'm also very proud of being part in recruiting you. Thank you, Dan.
Your Majesty, Excellencies, Speaker Alin, Minister Wallström and Hultqvist, Excellencies from the diplomatic service here present, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, I suppose I first want to say how honored I am and how honored the Institute as a whole is to have you all here. How pleased we are that you have chosen to join in this celebratory moment, both of our first half century, and as you have heard, we have every confidence that there's another half century to come, and also to welcome you to our newly renovated building, to see, I think, an environment which is suitable and befitting for the kind of work which we're doing. I'm laboring here this evening with two problems. One is that we're celebrating SIPRI's first 50 years, and I have to acknowledge that for 49 and a half years, SIPRI got along quite well without me. The second thing is that the speakers before me have been so wise and so well informed and have clearly dived so deeply into SIPRI's research that they covered all the ground which I had got written down in my notes here. So I'm going to kind of make it up as I go along. As has been said, SIPRI has a well-earned reputation for our work on the facts and the figures and the analysis of the hard and difficult security issues which have faced the world over the last half century and which face us today. Since coming here, I've only become more impressed by that work because I've started to see it a little bit, so to speak, from the inside and understood how much effort goes into getting the data right, to getting the methodology right, to getting everything sorted and consistent. Only today we have launched the arms transfer data fact sheet reflecting on the last 5 years of the world arms trade and showing, unfortunately, the upward trend in arms exports internationally, 14% increase over the previous 5-year period. To produce that kind of conclusion takes a lot of work. It does indeed take a lot of investment, and it's on the basis of that effort that we get then the reputation for our reliability, which, as I said, I think stands very high and everybody has attested to it. And that comes also, and I'm so pleased that this has been mentioned as well, it grows out of our impartiality. People who read our yearbook or who come on our website, wherever they are around the world, they know that this institute in Sweden is speaking what it sees to be the truth, and that there is nowhere else that you can go where you could find more reliable information than from this institute in Sweden. I think that what makes SIPRI and other institutes that are also working in similar kinds of fields so important is that if you look at the world security horizon now, it is full of challenges coming in fast and furious at policymakers, at decision makers. A place like SIPRI is offering policymakers and decision makers, it's also offering the media and the informed public a chance to pause for thought. And sometimes I look at political discourse in different countries around the world and I just think to myself, why couldn't you have just paused for thought? I know the pressures, I know how hard it can be in political life to do that. But where there is a will to do it, there is actually a possibility to do it. And somewhere like SIPRI is providing that opportunity. That's why we've labeled our 50th anniversary a year of reflection. It's not a year of action, it's not a year of priority, it's not a year of picking this issue or picking that issue. It's a year of reflection. And I'd like to, in a general but in a serious way, offer you all, and those who are watching us on the live streaming as well, to join in that process of reflection and to join in thinking about the world that we face and how best to face up to it. 50 years on, the security horizon has changed, and I think we've been remarking upon that already. The 1960s, I was thinking about the arms race, the East-West confrontation, perhaps the Vietnam War. Today, we're thinking about a much more complex world, not just to do with the challenges we see in the Middle East and the region around it, and in Central Asia with Afghanistan, problems in Southeast and in Northeast Asia, not just thinking about emerging technologies and the challenges which they pose to traditional ways of thinking about arms control and about the use of force, but also issues like the growing pressure of climate change on human society and on communities, the pressures of growing inequalities in a world which is marked, amongst other things, by being increasingly globally connected so that everything is visible and transparent, and at the same time increasingly urbanized. And our understanding of the opportunities has changed as well. 50 years ago, the term climate change and security was not part of the vocabulary, but nor was the term gender and security. And it is now, and it's in the yearbook, and that's rightly so, and we are exploring those issues. Nor was indeed the concept simply of peace building in the vocabulary 50 years ago. Nor was the idea of inclusivity of different social classes and groups in peace processes in order to make them serious. I think that, just like the achievement of, think about the Paris Agreement on climate change, think about the debates on climate change over the years, and think how much science and knowledge have contributed to making it possible for the world to move forward towards a climate change agreement. So over the years, SIPRI's work on nuclear proliferation, nuclear weapons technology, chemical and biological warfare, on the arms trade, have contributed directly into the arms control arrangements that have been made, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the control treaties on chemical and biological weapons, and the International Arms Trade Treaty. What we seek is informed policy making, and for that we need an informed public debate. We are also taking on board and taking very seriously that we are not just an international institute, but we're also the Stockholm International Institute. And we want and need to be present in debates which are happening in Stockholm and in Sweden over some of these core issues of international security. Later this year, we will in April be having a forum on security and development, and in September, a conference which has got extremely high level support, and we're very honored by that from both Your Majesty and from the Parliament, on secure cities. And those will be bringing issues out into the open which need to surface. Many people, I think, look at the current period and worry that the gains of the 1990s and the first decade of this century in peace are being lost. I wouldn't be in this business, and I wouldn't have been in it so long if I were not the most hopeless or indeed hopeful optimist that you are ever likely to meet. And I see something different. I see that in the 2 decades after the end of the Cold War, we learned an awful lot about how to make peace, about how to reduce numbers of weapons, about how to make peace-building processes work. What we did once, we can do again. What we need is to reflect, perhaps pause, understand, work hard. For SIPRI's part, we go where the facts take us. And I think that evidence-based and going where the facts take us is more important now than ever. Thank you so much for coming along this evening and being part of this celebration. But it is not just to celebrate the past, it is to launch us into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dan, for these interesting words. And I think it's important that you remind us all about the importance of independent and reliable figures. I think you were the one who told me that Gunnar Myrdal, the husband of Alva, used to say, facts kick. And I think that's quite important. But also what you mentioned, that we have moved further on. We are not only collecting reliable and independent facts, we're also trying to analyze them. And as you mentioned, we will have the conference on development and security for the third time. And then also this new initiative of security conferences. And we'll start out with secure cities. And if you wonder why, I think it's quite clear that today 50% of the global population are living in cities. But in a few more years, in 2050, it will be 75%. And that will create huge problems, also security problems. And SIPRI has some quite important and interesting research on this. And we will work together with other research institutes. So I think this could be a very, very interesting conference. And I also hope that ambassadors here present will take note of this conference. Old diplomats like to quote even older diplomats, because then somehow they appear more intelligent than they are. And one of my favorites is, of course, Talleyrand, who used to say, he was also a priest, that God created language so men could hide their thoughts. We are there to see to it that these thoughts are not hidden, but revealed to the public to see and give more transparency to the world, because only then we can understand what really happens. Thank you so much, everybody. I now invite you to a small reception in the rooms nearby, some food and some drinks. And if you would just remain seated for a small while, I'll escort the king out, and then maybe the guest of honor at the front bench could leave first before the rest of the people here join us together for drinks. Thank you so much, everybody.